Welcome to the ScanFlowStore new features video. This video will spend about 15 minutes to review the changes that have been made for the latest release of ScanFlowStore version 6.0. Main points of interest for this version will be the ability to perform live browsing of a folder structure at the Xerox device, improved and more user-friendly error handling, the addition of new connectors such as Microsoft CRM and OpenText Live Link, and enhancements to the current interactive client lookup abilities. First, we will take a look at the browsing ability. In this trigger, called folder browsing, the browsing will function similar to a standard question, just with a few additional options. So, under the Questions tab of the Scan module, there's already a question created called Folder. By editing the folder question, the settings are displayed. This browse question makes use of a previous username metadata question. This metadata question will be used to determine the starting location that browsing will begin from on the device. However, any folder location can be specified, including a network share folder. So, a UNC path format can be used as a starting location, given that the logon settings are adjusted to use an account with sufficient permissions to view that folder path. In addition, metadata can be used to populate the root folder. This makes it possible for users to log on through authentication, have the software capture their user details, and then use the user's home directory as a starting location for browsing. This can easily be done by specifying the account username, password, and domain, as well as the root folder, using the pre-created metadata values for authentication. For more information about these pre-created metadata values, please refer to the Help Files section labeled Metadata Description. This browsability can also be switched to function for Microsoft SharePoint, Xerox DocuShare, and one of the new connectors for version 6.0, OpenText Live Link. Selecting one of these modules will alter the available settings to specify where the starting point will be for browsing. For further information in each of these configuration options, please refer to the Help File page for each module for explanations on each of these fields. At the device, the template will appear with 3 questions as normal. The new version will now use a magnifying glass icon for a lookup question and a folder icon for a browse question, so the different types are easily identified at the device. This particular trigger will browse to a folder location determined by the lookup question. So, dependent on which name is selected from the first question, a starting path will be defined in the second question. For the first question, if Fred Sutton is selected, browsing to a folder in the second question will begin at Fred Sutton's folder. Now we will select the browse question to go into Fred Sutton's contracts folder. We can now change the first question to be another name. This time select Brian Gilbert. The browse question has now been cleared since the top level path was dependent on the lookup question. This makes it impossible to store into any folder outside of the selected name. We can then specify the quotes folder in Bride's folder to store to, and select OK. There is one final question, which will ask for a subfolder that can be created within the folder question. For this question, we will specify 2008 to add a 2008 folder into the quotes folder for Brian. We can now scan. Once the scan is completed, we can see the dynamics of the live browsing by again using the same lookup name, Brian Gilbert, and then browsing into the quotes folder. We can see now that a 2008 folder has been created, which was the name of the subfolder we created with the string question. This browse functionality makes it fully dynamic and removes the need for a source to be updated manually, as any folders created within the software or created on the server are automatically loaded each time the trigger is loaded. Also new to this release of ScanFlowStore is the improved error handling, where previously folders needed to be copied and pasted in order to retry a failed scan. and where it was impossible to automatically retry once a PDF is generated, the actions necessary can now be automated and function regardless of which step in the trigger the scan failed. Should an error occur in either processing the file or storing the file, a new attempt can be made automatically. These settings can easily be adjusted under the options portion of the trigger. The number of attempts, as well as the amount of time between each attempt, can be specified here. So if the trigger is set to the default 3 attempts with a 10-minute retry, then once the scan fails, another attempt to process and store will be made in 10 minutes, and then twice more after another 10 minutes between each attempt. Additionally, the option is available to disable the trigger once the maximum number of attempts are completed. If, after all 3 tries are made, the file still cannot process and store, the trigger will be disabled, and no further scans will be attempted with this trigger. By default, this option is not enabled. This means that if it is enabled and a trigger does get disabled, all scans made will enter the queue, and someone will need to manually edit the trigger to re-enable it. Once re-enabled, all queued scans will complete. Once the specified number of attempts are made, then the file will go to the failed jobs section. The failed jobs section can be expanded to show all failed jobs for each trigger. Below each trigger is a date and time stamped job. Selecting one of these jobs will display the details about that failed scan on the right pane. This will include an error message as well as a link to the file that was attempted to store. Each of these jobs can be automatically retried by right-clicking on the time and date stamp and selecting Retry. You may also right-click on the name of the trigger to retry all jobs for that trigger, or you can select Failed Jobs and select Retry to retry for all triggers that have a failed job within them. The final addition to error handling is the ability to keep the event logs, where previously the event view was deleted and lost after 5,000 lines were logged in. The text file will be now created in the installation folder to display the events for the entire day. Under the settings of the software, you can specify how many days this log file will be kept. If the default 10 days is selected, then the log file will be deleted once 10 days have passed. Selecting 0 days will delete the log file at the end of each day. New to this release of ScanFlowStore are the connectors for Microsoft CRM, OpenText LiveLink, ODBC, Oracle, WorldDocs, eSynergy Enterprise, and eDocs Hummingbird. In addition, ProLaw, which was previously supported only for version 9, is now supported with version 11. All of these can be used as a store location, while Microsoft CRM, ODBC, Oracle, LiveLink, and WorldDocs can be used as a lookup as well. Browsing is also supported for LiveLink and is supported for WorldDocs through the WinShare browsing function. These connectors will function similar to the upload properties of existing connectors, such as SQL and SharePoint. For further information on configuring each field, refer to the help file under the store module descriptions. Note that certain restrictions may apply to these new connectors and also to existing connectors, so be sure to check the ScanFlowStore installation guide located on the CD for information on any prerequisites and details on the supported versions of each connector. The lookup questions now have an additional option called the filter. This filter will reduce the number of options from the lookup source based on certain criteria. In the filter, you can select which column in the source we use for filtering. This trigger will make use of 2 questions, the first one being a country question and the second being a customer. Customer question will have a filter that is defined where the country will be equal to the metadata question country. This means that only the items within the customer database who have a country column that is equal to the country value that was selected in the first question will be displayed. If no value is selected under the country question, then all items will be displayed. Additionally, there's a new tab called Extra Metadata. Under this tab, you can specify additional columns to be created as separate metadata values. So for this question, the contact name and contact title have been set up under the contact and title metadata names. This means that these two values can also be used as metadata within the software. This way, with one selection, multiple columns from the same row can be used. Looking at the WinShare portion of this trigger, we can see that all four of these metadata values are available for use. The country, which was originally selected in the first question, and the customer, which was selected based on the first question, country. Additionally, for the file name, the contact and the contact title can be used. These will correspond to the customer that was selected. At the device, we can make a selection to view the available countries. Once Brazil is selected, we can now go to the second question, customer, and see only the customers whose country Brazil is listed, and select one of these. Now, we can go back and change the country question to now read for Argentina. You can see now that the customer field was emptied because the criteria no longer matches the Argentina country. Now we have a new set of options to select from. The extra metadata fields that are gathered based on this second question are entirely behind the scenes. So the user doesn't actually see any of this. This is a good way to hide confidential information that is used to storing the document, such as a social security number. Finally, there are some new minor changes to the software. With the new version, it is now possible to install on a 64-bit server without additional configurations. Note, however, that to use the interactive client for 64-bit servers, IIS must run in 32-bit mode. So, if it is a server running 64-bit IIS applications, the interactive client will not function unless IIS is converted, meaning the 64-bit applications will no longer function unless they're able to also run in 32-bit mode. In addition, users may now be imported into ScanFlowStore through CSV files. Several icons have been changed for increased ease of navigation for users. Improvements have been made to the interactive client interface for the 7200 series devices. Support has been added for the Windows 2008 operating system. LDAP may now be used as a lookup module, and support has been added for the WorkCenter Pro 7346 as well as the WorkCenter 4260. This concludes the ScanFlowStore New Features video. For more information or assistance with configuring these new features, please contact support at the number listed or send an email to support@x-solutions.com.